So, Dr. Jeff, in this discussion, what do you think people aren't talking about or aren't aware of that we need to be discussing?
Well, one thing that strikes me is the government's response is very interesting to me, and it has been all the way along. And on my own YouTube channel, Forensic Psychology, I put a few videos on starting back to last summer before the files were even released. Because one of the things that struck me was why don't they want to release the files? And the other part that's struck me is when more information came out, they had 6 million pages, a couple 100,000 videos. I mean, a couple 100,000 photos. And when we go back to 2008. This was a rich guy who had some famous friends who was molesting teenage girls. Why do we have 6 million pages on this person? The other piece, too, was interesting was his house manager trying to sell his black book. And the FBI did a whole sting with an undercover agent. This is before all this information came to light. They were very interested in him. And they put forth a lot of resources for this guy that I think were beyond what you would expect, given the facts of the case going back in 2008, 2009. So then I wondered, I wondered out loud, right? Was he a government asset? Was he collecting information for the government? And then now, this firestorm we see about redacting names, because one thing that I thought, why wouldn't they just come out and say, you know what? He was working for us. We were buying information from him. I mean, we know the federal government will do that, right? They want to get dirt on someone, they'll buy information. Absolutely. I used to work for the federal government, and when they're in an investigation, the more information they can get. But why wouldn't they do that, right? If they came out and said, yeah, and I think he was selling information to other countries, let's say they just did that. Well, then it shows that they were sort of complicit in allowing a sex trafficking operation to occur. And that would obviously bring on a lot of backlash from the public. So one of the most fascinating things to me about this case is just the government's response. Because if they weren't involved, there wouldn't be all these headlines, right? Let's say they were involved and they just said, oh, we've got to file on this guy and we'll release it all, right? But I think this is way more complicated than a rich guy who's loaning out girls to be abused. There's a lot of layers here. The other part is his money. There's a lot of questions about where his money came from. And how many things in life is it just follow the money, right? So those are the things that are I mean, it's all interesting to me, but those are the big questions that I have is, how much government involvement was there with him? I'm not saying that they put him up to it, but they were very interested in him early on, going back into 2008, 2009, before all of this information came out and before he was picked up on federal charges.
To go even deeper on these ideas, you can watch my full episode using the link in the description or the box on the screen.